My name is Charles James Thomas. I served in the Korean War from 1950 to 1954. I was a senior firefighter. I was assigned to a aircraft crash and rescue unit, and I was discharged with the rank of sergeant. We had some pretty big pieces of apparatus, and we had quite a few pieces of equipment. I would say each shift had probably 50 or 75 between 50 and 75 firefighters on it, probably manning 10 or 12 pieces of equipment. Went from the smallest little Jeep type apparatus to huge trucks with gallons and gallons of water and foam. We had three fire stations. Everyone, the fire department responded and stood by on the runways waiting for that aircraft to come in and land. You know, it was a stressful thing, knowing the plane may crash, but that was the job, and you did it. I can always remember the very first aircraft crash I went to. It was a very nervous situation for me. I expected all kinds of things to happen because of seeing plane crashes on movies. There wasn't any television at the time. My very first aircraft crash was a very trying experience. And we were sent out to the runways to wait for an incoming airplane, and the aircraft only had one piece of landing gear, and the pilot did a stupendous job of keeping the airplane level until it slowed down, and then the wing tipped to the side where the gear was missing and just spun around and went into the grass, and no problem happened. But I was kind of nervous while all this was going on. I remember the very first big bomber crash. Three people died in it. The plane was nothing there. All little parts all along the route that the plane took when it crash landed. This little cabin was left, and here were the three dead people in that cabin, the cockpit, and it was a dreadful sight. I was stationed on an Air Force base that was very close proximity to where they built those aircraft. And the aircraft was a B-47 bomber, and they used to use our air base to test the planes, and we had an awful lot of accidents because it's a new plane, and we had a lot of plane crashes that way because they were untested, and we lost a lot of personnel. It was a big aircraft. They had quite a few people in as a crew, at least 5. So each crash meant we lost 5 men. I really didn't intend to be in a crash crew. I always wanted to be a fireman all my life. And when I first went into the Air Force after basic training, I was in the Air Police, and I'd much rather have wanted to be in the fire department, and I asked for a transfer to the fire department, and after explaining that I desired that all my life, they okayed it, and I got transferred to the fire department. I just pictured as being for buildings and that. Unbeknownst to me, it had more to do with the aircraft than the buildings itself. I did work on the buildings once every couple of months. You get assigned to structure firefighting, but for the most part, most of our workload was aircraft work. You had to know a whole bunch of airplanes, and you had to know where the exit points were, how to go about fighting the fires as far as getting in and shutting the batteries off. You had to be careful of these all had ejection seats, and if they were armed and everything like that, it was things to be considered. Plus, now the physical work was they used to dump gallons of used oil and gasoline, and they used to ignite it, and we used to have to go in and this simulated a crash with a fire and get the dummies out of, rescue the dummies. Tough work. Dirty, smoky, bad. And nobody liked to do that. Every time you did something wrong, you went to the pit fires. At that time, they created a lot of smoke, noxious fumes. Nowadays, I don't know if they would even allow them to do it. I don't know what training they go through now. Most of the time on an aircraft crash, there weren't too many rescues. We have rescued people. Most of the time, it's extinguish the fire and take care of the fatalities. The landings were bad because of the impact. When they come down and they impact on takeoff, they're more or less level until they get really off the ground and get up there, and the impact isn't all that bad because it's the impact of the landing aircraft that really tear it to pieces. And the fuel is spent and vaporized, which is the most dangerous thing can happen to fuel. But usually landing is worse than the takeoffs. I made a lot of friends while I was in the service. We were a very tight-knit group. But after you get discharged, everybody goes to their own states. We had people from all over the whole country. My best friend, in fact, and I enlisted in the Air Force together in 1950. And I'm still friends with him, and he lives very close, within blocks. Another friend who happened to be, I married out in Kansas while I was stationed out there, and he was my best man. He's living down in Florida now. He originally came from Columbus, Ohio, and I traveled through that area every 2 years. I stopped to see him and visit with him. Now he's down in Florida, and whenever I get down to Florida, I see him down there. I belong to the Veterans of Foreign Wars Association, VFW. I support the VFW very highly, and I go to all their affairs that I can attend, and just support them. Participating was a nice thing with these veterans and all, but they just are too old now to do it. Most of them are in their 70s and 80s and 90s. Actually, I'm a little disappointed in the turnouts, and their memories aren't that good. Number one, I would think, would be for someone to be a pen pal with a soldier, because they always like to hear what's going on locally. And also volunteering at the servicemen events, so for instance a USO dance or something like that, and you serve them soda and stuff like that, sandwiches and whatever.